nice one. Alright, so, first of all, central banking begins by government privilege. It is given to the central bank, and the privilege is for monopoly of money. So, it basically means the government gives you the right to be the only one. There is no other money. And worse, the government forces you, whether you like or don't like, to take the money. Okay? How we call this force to take the money? Alright, let me see if my new red color works beautiful. Legal. Under law. Alright. So, a part of monopoly of money includes monopoly of banknotes. In other words, it's not just gold, it's actually banknotes. So, this means central bank can print as much as it wants. Okay? That's a major privilege. Okay? And they can print when they need it. Again, the central bank can't print too much, because if they print too much, people will see money coming to the market and they will adjust their inflationary expectations, and their demand for money will drop, inflation will rise, and essentially the central bank will lose its power over money. Power over money exists as long as there is demand for money. If people don't want the money, then the central bank becomes powerless. So they want to print some, but not too much. Alright, let's see what else I have here. The central bank, we said, is the banker's bank. That was page 126. All right. Next, it comes later on, is that a vital characteristic, I'm reading here on page 126 at the very bottom, is that of centralization of reserves. And I'll explain this now. Centralization of reserves. The tool for centralization of reserves is the required reserves. These are reserves that commercial banks must maintain, and usually they maintain at the central bank. Usually the law will require that they maintain the reserves at the central bank. Well, if you have to maintain all of your reserves at the central bank, and you want maximum profit, they say, oh, you got to keep with us 10% and no more. Then the required reserves plus loaning up means that the commercial bank will not keep any reserves with itself. Central bank says you got to keep with us 10%. Why would they keep extra 3 or extra 5 or extra 10 or extra 20%? They will keep everything they need at the central bank, and they'll keep little to no reserves in the commercial bank. So if they loan up, all commercial banks' reserves will be at the central bank. So the central bank will contain all reserves of commercial banks. The form is, we studied last time. Let's get this red marker. Fed funds. So, commercial bank reserves will be centralized in the central bank in the form of Fed funds as required reserves. Loaning up means commercial banks will not keep much or any reserves in the bank. They'll keep it all, meaning in the commercial bank, in the central bank. All right, that was again page 126. All right. Now, the next characteristic is actually fairly straightforward. When we have deposit banking, money supply was stable. First of all, let me rewrite this and clarify. Money supply was equal to banknotes plus deposits. Let's say you have $100. You can keep in banknotes 90, and you can keep 10 in deposit. Or you can choose and keep $50 in banknotes and $50 in deposit. Or you can choose and keep $20 in banknote and $80 in deposit. But you can choose to keep only $1 in banknote, 99 in deposit, okay? The money supply does not change. All that changes the form of money. You keep some in banknotes, you keep some in deposit, okay? You could have $100 in banknotes and 0 in deposit. So, again, this is money supply equals 100, 100, 100, 100, 100. Money supply does not change, only the form of money changes. That's on deposit banking. So the deposit banking, we say, provides for stable money supply. Now, under central banking, that's certainly not the case. Central bank. Now, this thing is on page 127. Page 127, close to the bottom, says in a regime of free banking, the more frequently that then clients desire and whatnot. Okay, the money supply is stable. Now, the two forms of money supply is banknotes and deposits. Under central banking, money supply again equals banknotes plus deposits. But now there is a big difference. Whether the consumer chooses a deposit or a banknote makes a world of difference, makes a huge difference. Let me see. When demand for money rises, in other words, before your demand for money, as in demand for banknotes, rise. Okay, let's write this. Demand for banknotes rises. This is exactly the same as, remember, demand for banknote rises. Demand for deposits, what? Falls. But remember, you put in $100 in the commercial bank is exactly the same as giving them $100 of reserves. So, demand for deposit falls, and therefore reserves fall. Now, the easiest way to think about exactly this thing is you have $1,000 in the bank has your money, they loan up. If, let's say, the reserve ratio is 20%, the multiplier is 5, they create $5,000 of loans on top of your $1,000. Well, if your demand for banknote increases, you go to the bank, you take your $1,000, you put it in your pocket, and your deposit falls by $1,000. Well, when the bank gives you $1,000 of cash, the bank's reserves went down. But if the bank's reserves went down, what happens to the bank? The bank must contract credit. Remember, if reserves increase by $1,000 with a multiplier of 5, they can loan up to $5,000. But the exact opposite is true. If reserves shrink by $1,000, they have to loan down, meaning they have to reduce the loans significantly. They have to reduce the loans by $5,000. So when reserves go down, then we say that loans go down, but they go down a lot. How many times more? The multiplier times. If the multiplier is 5, they have to shrink loans 5 times. Okay? And eventually, the money supply, reserves go down. Okay, I can continue actually here. Okay, I can continue here. So, reserves go down. They have to shrink the loans, but if reserves go down, they have to shrink deposits many times over, multiple times. They have to shrink deposit multiple times, and as a result, the money supply doesn't simply shrink, it shrinks a lot. Alright, so central banking, which is money supply plus deposit, provides for unstable money supply. Unstable, we like to use the word in economics and finance, we say volatile. Volatile means